now I'm recording, sorry.
That's right.
Thank you. Since 1980, Kate has appeared in more than 110 one-person exhibitions and in over 60 group exhibitions. She's a native of South Australia. She moved to Texas in 1988, where she completed a Master's of Fine Art degree at the University of Texas. She's also taught photography in the Department of Art and Art History at the University of Texas. Her work is housed in collections all over the world, including the Houston Museum of Fine Arts, the Center for Creative Photography in Tucson, the Australian National Gallery, and the San Diego Museum of Photographic Arts. And I met another person. She teaches workshops nationally and internationally.
Not anymore.
Well, maybe after COVID, we'll get back to that. She currently lives in Tucson, Arizona, where she has now lived for over 20 years. And it is in Tucson where she joins us remotely tonight. And again, before I hand this meeting over to Kate, I want to remind people about the chat box at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any questions for Kate, please type in your question in the chat box. And also
we could just wait and do it informally afterwards.
Yeah, we can do it, but yeah, so if you, we'll do both. And then we're also recording this talk, and we're hoping to post it on Facebook and our Instagram accounts for Brickworks Gallery after this event is over. So with all that being said, welcome, Kate Breakey. I'm going to hand it to you.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through a little process here that I think I know how to do. Advanced, portion of screen, share, click on the keynote, slideshow. All right, so everyone can see that.
Yep.
I hope everyone's moved. So. Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much, Laura. That was lovely. And thank you everyone for coming to this. As Laura said, I'm coming to you from the desert Southwest that looks like this. It's still extremely hot. The desert is one of my greatest inspirations. Hang on, I've got to see if I can advance the slide now. Yes, there we go. Everyone thinks the desert's a terrible place, but it's absolutely beautiful. It's glorious, in fact. Okay, I've been a practicing artist now for 40 years. I originally trained as a painter, printmaker, and I made my way to photography in the early 1980s in Adelaide, Australia, just as photography was coming into its own as a fine art medium. And I started to hand color with transparent oil paint. I could never really give up the, paint and ink and all the stuff that I had loved so much in my first degree. You probably know there's this long tradition of hand coloring. It was being done before the invention of color photography, and it became a hobbyist thing in the 50s. You could get a kit and a how-to book from Kodak. So until photography came along, I was, of course, printing silver gelatin images in a dark room and using transparent oil paint and colored pencils. And then, of course, digital happened and turned everything upside down for artists, kind of a good way, I think. But way back then in the 80s, I did this series of little cactuses, potted cactuses that were all hand colored, started out black and white, and then I would put the layers and layers of paint and ink on them. So basically, I alter images. Here's just another one from back then, 86, when I did a whole series of eucalyptus tree trunks. 3 of us walked down a riverbed and photographed this length of dry creek bed for 10 miles. And I did a series of these portraits of trees. So as I said, I paint using paints. You can see there, all the messy stuff there, transparent oil paints. And again, this is kind of roughly the size. I worked for a very long time, 33 inches square. I'll just show a few more of these. Again, these are old silver gelatin hand colored. I did a whole huge series of still life work that was inspired by all of those early European still life paintings Again, quite big. I did a whole series of tumbleweeds. Actually, I did that when I was already here because I love tumbleweeds. And lots of this work got published in one of the books that Laura talked about. I also use encaustic wax occasionally, and I gild. I actually, I put gold leaf on the back of images, which is this modern day version of what was called an orotone, which was the turn of the century process that a few people, including Edward Curtis, were using to make their images richer and glow. So this is images that are printed on glass, and then I gild the back of them with real gold leaf, 23.5 carat gold leaf. And I've done hundreds and hundreds of these now. I've actually gone back and mined my my old film images, and I scan them and I print them on glass. I don't print them on glass. I have someone print them on glass. Also, I use now a lot. I use these pastels, which are dry pastels. And this is because really all of these digital papers are so beautiful. All the watercolor papers. I often use Kozo paper, which is this thin mulberry paper, very thin and almost translucent, and you can put charcoal on that, and it's really beautiful. This is an image called Horse in the Moonlight that was part of a series that Laura had a couple of years ago, I think, called Ghosts of Love, that were all white things in darkness. Here's another one. And again, this paper is so nice to use just pencils and charcoal on. Another one. And then most recently, I've been printing on silk and sewing into images. I did this big series of nests, and I used to sew when I was young. I used to make all my own clothes. We all did, living in a country town. You go down and get a pattern and then, cut it and then sew it on the sewing machine. And so I love sewing. It was something that sort of actually I find very calming and therapeutic. So I wanted to do, so I printed all these nests on this flimsy silk, and then basically sewed back all of these little threads into them. Again, Laura has some of these in the gallery. This is what I showed this time last year for Atlanta Celebrates Photography. And again, it's kind of hard to see from front on, but they're very three-dimensional. So there's a side-on view here to see how much thread I've worked back in. And I really loved the optical illusion, because you can't really tell that they're on silk until you get up close, and you certainly can't see the threads. It's another one. These are just, so I think there's 40 something all up, from great big rambling magpie nests. Some of these are Australian nests, through to tiny little beautifully delicate hummingbird nests. So the other thing I do, and have been doing more recently, is using digital filters on top of images to get this sort of painterly effect. And I really like that. I use that as a starting point for lots of things I do, including the work that's in the gallery at the moment. They've all been adjusted somehow. They've got some kind of what you call a grunge filter on top to kind of break it up and make it less photographic. So here's another one. Again, just sort of messing with the color and adding on these layers of grungy stuff, which is fun. I guess basically I'm adding, layers of other stuff on top of a photograph, because I've always been interested in blurring the lines between painting and drawing and photography. I love the fact that it makes an image unique and therefore sort of more personal. And I can't resist the hands-on part of it. I love the sensual nature of like physically working on an image, and I love it, ink and paint and seeing what it does. And it's always a surprise. I never quite know how it's going to look, so I kind of love that mystery. It makes up for not working in the dark room. So I also print, I also work very small. I did a whole series of little tiny quail eggs, life-size quail eggs. Again, I think Laura's got some of those still in the gallery from last year. And each one is colored with pencil and pastel and framed up in these little frames that make them look like miniature paintings. I also work very big. So for many years, I did these photograms, I guess it was about the course of 10 years. And they got published in this one of the other books that got referred to in 2012. So a photogram, and they're all of animals, dead animals and plants, and they range from things as big as coyote to tiny little things like scorpions and spiders. And I frame these up in vintage frames, which takes me more time than actually making the artwork. And then I put them on the walls in these big sort of installations. So a photogram, if you're a photographer, you know, is a silver gelatin contact print. This is the real animal that's been laid on a piece of photographic paper and exposed to light. So here's a jackrabbit that someone found me in the desert, and in the dark, it would lay on the photographic paper, and I would expose it for some time, 10 seconds, and then process it, and this is what I get. So as I said, I did this for years and years and did hundreds and hundreds of animals. So I'll just show you a few more of these actually. And again, they're life size when you do them because they're a contact print. They're the real thing making its own shadow on the piece of paper. And where things are translucent, like this little bat, of course, the wings are slightly translucent and the light goes through them and you get this strange three-dimensional effect. Also, the same thing happens, you know, with bird wings and feathers that are translucent. So again, just hundreds and hundreds of creatures brought to me mostly by people who find them and know that I'll make them, I'll memorialize them in some way. So this is out of the book, which is we put the genus species and the name of it in the book. So it became slightly scientific because photograms were called photogenic drawings, and they were the first kind of photography without a camera. So I've been putting together about 100 of these more recently, only of the birds that I have, and I've got about 100 different birds because I've been invited to be in a group show that's curated by Laura called 3 billion, which is the number of birds that have disappeared from North America since 1970. Even, it turns out, the highly adaptive invasive species like starlings and sparrow populations have declined 63%. And since birds are pollinators and insectivores, this is serious. It's just one more way we've really messed things up. Anyway, I'm going to do a whole wall. That show was going to be this year, but it's been postponed until early next year. So I've just been laying it out. This is not all of them. I just did little tiny to scale images of them so I could actually lay the wall out in case I can't go and hang the show myself. Some poor person has to do that, and it's much easier if they have a key, a guide. So I'm also, for that same show, working on a series of birds, dead birds, that look a little bit like, hopefully like 19th century drawings. I got very inspired by these illustrations I found in this book by a French biologist whose name I can't pronounce, but they were intricate drawings of jellyfish, scientific drawings of jellyfish from early 1800. And I wanted to emulate this look, especially sort of the old stained paper. And of course you can do that using Photoshop filters. Here's another one of his. So I can do that using all these filters in Photoshop. And then of course I tear the edges so that it looks old, and then I pin them. Again, Laura has some of these from the last show in the gallery at the moment, but these are going to the 3 billion show, along with, I think, how many people? 6 people or something?
Yeah,
anyway,
6 to 7 different artists,
including Laura's work, which is extraordinary. That's in the Hudgen Museum, Hudgen Centre for the Arts in Dulwich.
No, it's in Gwinnett County, in Duluth.
Okay, Duluth, sorry. And so anyway, you'll be posting about that because that opens in January.
Yeah, the first, it'll open February 6th.
Okay.
I'll need your work in January.
Yes,
And then,
that's right.
and then it'll open officially February 6th.
So I've been working with the Audubon, Atlanta Audubon Society, who've sent me a whole lot of dead birds. Bird strike, it's called. These are birds that have probably flown into windows or been hit by cars or something. And they make careful surveys of how many and what kind. So they've sent me them to make photographs so that I can make them look more like this. This one's not finished. I go back and actually do a lot of pencil work on them. So again, they look much more like drawings, but they're going to be in this show too. So I'm just going to go back a bit, because one of my greatest influences is that I grew up in a small country town on the southern coast of Australia. And I had this absolutely amazing childhood with lots and lots of animals and pets, lots of rescue animals that my parents used to do, lots of big rambling wild gardens. This is me and my cousin, who was born 3 days. We were born 3 days apart, so we were like best friends. And again, lots of motherless lambs, lots of stray dogs and cats, etc. Actually, my aunt and uncle were the rescuers, but we were around a lot of animals all the time. Had horses, and just these vast, remote, untouched landscapes that I've been going back to photograph with film. I mean, I used to go back and photograph with film. Now I photograph them digitally, but this is 2¼ square film, which was my format of choice. I had a Rolleiflex twin lens reflex, and then I had a Hasselblad, and of course now I shoot digital like everyone else. Anyway, lots of these vast landscapes to travel through. Some of them untouched, some of them again, wild swans down in one of the lagoons. Black swans are native to that part of Australia. This one's called 13 Kangaroos. You can actually count 13 kangaroos on that hillside. Folded hills. And I guess, you know, I have to say that I think that whole experience made me love the natural world, made me love animals, and made me love landscape. And, you know, all of that became the theme of my work. I guess I find the natural world, you know, more fascinating than anything else. I've never been a street photographer. I just don't have it in me to photograph people or buildings. So I did a whole series on trees, because over the course of my life, I've just gone and collected images of trees. This one actually happens to be in Bahrain, and it's a moonrise over a very sacred tree called the Tree of Life, which is supposed to be the place where the Garden of Eden was. It's a giant old 400-year-old mesquite tree that no one knows what its water source possibly is, and that it's looked after by the Babylonian water god, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it was a beautiful tree, and I photographed it in Moonlight. And then this one is, so anyway, I've got a huge series of trees. And again, these are these grunge filters I put on, which I don't use so much now, because I kind of don't like when they get to look really fake. I do it much more subtly now, but I got very excited that I could make something look like a tintype, and I was putting these filters on the edges. This is a juniper tree in Monument Valley. So again, huge series of tree pictures from all over. And I called the series Tree Stories because each of those trees did have a story that I could tell about finding it and seeing it and photographing it. So there's like a little accompanying story with each tree. This one's in Italy, actually. This one's in Mexico, a Huisac tree. This one is in Australia. Again, way too much grunge for my taste. I'll redo it one of these days. I just got too excited about the grunge thing. Another tree from Australia. And that's the ocean back there. That line of blue is the ocean. So, you know, I grew up climbing trees. I grew up, you know, in and around trees, that I just have this absolute, you know, attraction to them whenever I see them in a landscape. That's that tree in Italy. That's a cherry tree, I think, with a little ladder that seemed magical and like a fairy tale. So here's what was, I throw all my tree pictures in, as I sort of accumulate them, I throw them in a folder so I can sort of get back to them one day. And it's kind of a way of, I actually physically print them out and keep them in boxes too, but this is a way to kind of see them and think about what I might do with them. I've also got a huge collection of birds in trees, which I'm working on now. And I love how transient this moment is when you see this happen, and you know, in a second they fly away, and that's that. So again, I've got so many of these pictures. This one's from Australia. These are these very loud, noisy Corella at dawn, and I think this is here at twilight. And here's galahs, which are another kind of Australian cockatoo in a dead tree. These are orioles in New Mexico. But as I said, I've now accumulated, you know, 30, 40 pictures that I'd like to gather together into a series. I work in many series simultaneously, but I'm usually always just gathering things for a time when I can sort of put them all together and make sense of them. It's another one of the galahs. So my interest in birds goes way back. In the 90s, I started this series that is the theme of one of the books, the first book, Small Deaths, that were all, they were all portraits, head and shoulder portraits that I blew up quite large of little dead birds. And I won't go into it because it's kind of too long a story, but I spent years and years of these. They're all hand colored from black and white, again, printed in the dark room, and then colored with layers of paint. So that's that one. And again, did so many in the end. Hang on, I'll just get to this one. I'll show you a few more. Yeah, did end up like maybe 200 in the end, different birds. And at the same time, I was doing flowers, and the flowers kind of went with the birds. The birds were all memorials to these little individual dead creatures, and the flowers were almost I don't know, anthropomorphized, I suppose. They had some attributes, obviously, you know, sorrow and so forth, all these bowing, wilting flowers, which is how I'm still doing flowers today. But anyway, you probably know flowers have been the subject of art since the very beginning. Flowers have been around on Earth for 500 million years, long before animals were. And there's estimated to be about 400,000 species of flowering plants on Earth. And you also probably know that the sole purpose of a flower is reproduction. Its color and scent is to attract pollinators, and that's an example of this symbiosis that we're ruining very fast. So again, 32 inches square, and then elaborately colored with oils, and then lots of work with pencils that make them quite painterly. They've also been the subject of art for a very long time, and since the beginning, they were symbols. And going back, you know, to ancient Egypt and ancient China, thousands of years, they've played a huge role in mythology and in folklore. There's this thing, I'll just get to the end of this lot. There's this thing called Floriography, which is about really the language of flowers, the meaning and metaphor of flowers over time. And I'll just read this because, sorry, there's too many of these. Actually, I'll wait a minute. There's I did a whole series called Black Tulips. Again, too involved to tell you about, but I got 8 of my women friends I gave them bulbs of this Queen of the Night, which was the species of tulip that was black or nearly black, and asked everyone to grow me a tulip, and then did portraits of the women with their tulips, and then big pictures of the tulips, and I put them in these vintage dresser mirror frames. And I think you've got one of those, Laura. It's not in a dresser frame, but you have one in the gallery. But again, that was like this whole project, and it was all based on the history of that the bulbs in the Netherlands, and the fact that the reigning king at the time was going to give someone a fortune in guilders if they could breed a black tulip. This is in the tulip mania days, where tulips were actually tulip bulbs were more valuable than money. That's the one you've got, Laura. Only it's no, is it? Yeah, I can't remember. It doesn't matter. It's yeah. Anyway, so this word floriography, it's utterly fascinating. I got interested in this a while back. That in every culture, flowers are symbols or metaphors, and there's like this whole language of meaning. And as you can see, books about this. And so I think you can see that every single flower, and sometimes every color of every single flower, has a different meaning. I'll just read you. This floriography is as a means, cryptological communication through the use of arrangements of flowers. Meaning has been attributed to flowers for thousands of years, and some form of floriography has been practiced in traditional cultures throughout Europe, Asia, and Africa. Interested in this soared in Victorian times in England and in United States. And like, so gifts of blooms and plants and specific floral arrangements were used to send coded messages to the recipient, allowing the sender to express feelings that could not be spoken aloud in Victorian society. So learning the special symbolism of flowers became a popular pastime during the 1800s, and nearly all Victorian homes had one of these guidebooks for deciphering the language. So if someone gave you a yellow rose, you knew exactly what it meant. And it usually meant jealousy, actually. Yellow rose, I think. A red rose, of course, means love. Anyway, the definitions actually often shifted depending on the guidebook. But again, flowers were used to deliver messages that couldn't be spoken aloud. In a sort of silent dialogue, they could be used to answer yes or no. Yes came in the form of flowers handed over in the right hand. The left hand was used to answer no. So plants could also express aversive feelings, such as conceit and bitterness. And similarly, a rose could be devotion, apple blossom, showing preference, and yellow carnations to express disdain. It just goes on and on and on and on. And of course, wilted bouquets developed into obvious messages. So I'm just going to show you, I photograph all my flowers, whether they're in the vase stuff that's up in the gallery or the close-up ones that were the older hand-colored black and white large ones, using natural light only. I have a nice big light space in my studio, and I can pull down that blind and diffuse the light a bit, but I basically just do it, using a little piece of foam core as a reflector and a big piece of sheet of something neutral as a backdrop. And again, nothing too fancy. I always have a helper cat around who often will jump up in the middle of a photo shoot. Laura, you can actually see some of the ones down on the left that are actually in the gallery, all these different, I've got this large collection of these vintage vases, and so I just go to a florist's warehouse and buy flowers. We don't really have flowers out in the desert except in shops. So I buy them and then I arrange them, and then as they die, I photograph them, and I find them as beautiful when they're dying as when they're alive. So again, just simple compositions like this. And then this is what I do to them. This one's in the exhibition. So most of my family were avid gardeners. These are protea, which are actually native to South Australia, and I think Africa. And you can always get these at the market. They're sensational flowers. They're almost prehistoric. I mean, they probably are prehistoric. Protea. Yeah, I think they are. Banksia and Protea. Most of my family were gardeners, and as I said, I grew up, you know, rolling around in long grass and picking flowers, and lots of I don't know, lots of just getting to know the smell of different weeds and herbs and so forth. And I guess, you know, that's part of the reason I think I, you know, grew up with this interest in biology, I mean, botany. And I think, I'll just show you a few more of these. Again, this has got these filters over the top that give it this look, this painterly look. And then I go back in with pencil and pastel and add in more color and sometimes work back into the detail. And I guess well, I'll just show you some more of these. And I've been framing things like this right to the edge, which I think makes them much more painterly. Because I like the idea, again, you can't quite tell what you're looking at, whether you're looking at a photograph or a painting. And I often do this aura thing where I give everything a little aura. I started that, you would have seen with the cactus. I like the idea that you know, they glow. And this is an older negative of something called Microcirrus. It's like a very coarse looking dandelion, and actually it's native to the desert here, and they come up, they're wild, and they come up in my backyard along with the Mexican primroses. And here's Queen Anne's lace, which I've always loved. There's this whole story about how Queen Anne used to make lace, sew lace, and she pricked her finger and a spot of her blood fell down on the lace she was making, and as a little tiny red spot. And when you see these, when they're actually blooming, there's a tiny little red spot right in the middle of the actual flower. But there's something beautiful about them. And again, I've been finding vintage frames, although I don't get out these days to go do that. But I kind of love the idea that they have a vintage look. Oh, sorry, I think I went backwards then. Again, one of my vintage vases. Again, back to the symbolism. Carnations, in fact, are hugely symbolic. I think they were always in paintings, early European paintings. And they're the flowers of God. They translate dianthus, flowers of God, and they're always in paintings of Madonna and Child. They represent divine love. And of course, roses. Oops, I think I showed you that one already, sorry. Peonies. So, you know, I guess in summary, I'd just say that, again, making images of things in the natural world, you know, is a sort of an extension of being fascinated and intrigued. And, you know, it's the way I show kind of love to the earth. Oh, I think that might be it. I forgot an ending side. I'm sorry. Never mind. Okay. Do I stop? You are sharing, stop share. Okay. So we go back to, yeah. All right. Am I back to being?
Yes.
You can, yeah.
Back to everybody.
Yeah.
And if you want to ask Kate a question, you can either do it through the chat, or you'll have to, if you want to ask her directly, you'll have to unmute yourself to ask her over the Zoom call. But one of the questions that I have for you, Kate, is can you explain this fascination with death that you've shown in a lot of your pieces, the death and dying, the process?
I guess, you know, we're all sort of fascinated with death because we're all going to die, and it's a natural sort of terrible, wonderful thing. And I think we see wildlife die, we see our pets die, and it's still like one of these incredibly mysterious things. I'm not religious, so I think it's, you know, the end of my molecules, or not my molecules, because they'll turn back into dust. But I guess decay, I guess the transition, you know, from life through life to death is so enormously complex and you know, spiritual, if you like, that, you know, again, it's one of those things that perhaps looking at it more closely, I mean, at least for the birds, I was trying to memorialize them. I was realizing that we don't notice a whole lot of death. We certainly don't, you know, death is now gotten so ridiculously sort of weirdly commonplace during this particular time that, you know, you just read these numbers and it doesn't, you know, it almost has no effect on you. Just like when you hear about, you know, terrible famines in Ethiopia and all those children dying, we can disregard a lot of death unless it's very personal to us. And of course we disregard the death that goes on out there, huge numbers of little creatures that are dying every day, and often they're you know, a spider's got millions of baby spiders because only one of those babies is going to make it through to adulthood, and quail have, I don't know, God knows how many little baby quail who are just all food for a snake or a coyote. And you know, this terrible churning through life just is a food for other things or whatever. It's kind of the most dramatic thing imaginable. And as I said, we disregard it all, you know. But I wanted to sort of personalize it for the little birds. They became little individual creatures who each had like a life story in a way. And when I blew them up that big, so they were human scale, I felt like I could even have a conversation with them. You know what I mean? They were my scale, and I could relate to them and sort of react to myself relating to them in a different way than just a little thing that you hold in your hand. So that series was less about their death and more about sort of acknowledging and memorializing them as creatures. Is that?
Can you also speak a little bit more about your connection to art and science? There's such a strong connection to science and scientific process in your work.
Yeah, I guess, as I said, I think if you're a lover of nature, you know, I've got reference books. I go look up what the birds are. I you know, I look up what the feathers are. I look at what the flowers are, and I get interested because, you know, I realize that it's totally fascinating when you actually know some of the facts about things. And so, you know, you'd have, I'm interested in science. I actually lived with a scientist for 30 years, a molecular biologist. And so I developed an interest in science, but more for me, it was zoology and botany. And I think growing up, as I said, if I'd been a better academic, I probably would have chosen to be some kind of biologist, right? But I was good at drawing, so I became an artist instead. Actually, I wanted to be an illustrator. I wanted to be like a scientific illustrator and like work in a natural history museum, like working on painting dioramas and drawing, rendering things. And so that was kind of my love.
Okay. I have a question from Matt, who asks, in regard to process currently, are you photographing in digital form and printing the images in black and white?
No.
And then painting, penciling, and coloring in color to the prints, or are you printing in color and then adding hints of color later?
Well, I'm printing, it's kind of halfway in between. I actually take the color image and I digitally manipulate it, and often I take color out and I adjust the color and I put the filters on, And then I go back in with the pastels and the pencils. So it's kind of halfway in between now, but I don't use the color image the way it would come out of the camera. I actually modify that substantially so I can go back and work on top of it.
Okay.
So some of the color in there is digital, but lots of it is pastel and pencil.
Okay. And then if people want to ask Kate some questions directly, I'll open it up to the rest of the group, but make sure you unmute yourself before you ask.
Unmute yourself, yeah.
Kate, I have to ask
Yeah.
you about the magnolias. Do you have magnolias down in Tucson? I know there's a few trees up here that I know of.
No, I did those. I used to live in Austin, Texas, where of course there's huge big magnolia trees everywhere. And every time I go to Texas, and I used to go back once a year because I have a show in a gallery there, and I always run around and grab a magnolia flower and make pictures of them because they're so beautiful. And of course, they you know, they're very photographic, and everyone's photographed magnolias, including what's her name?
Imogen.
Yes, Imogen Cunningham. Anyway, so yeah.
Or the definition of that flower, its beauty, in your literature that you put up about the florography.
Yes, florography. It's fascinating. As I said, you can really get sucked into reading the list because it's like, oh my God. Anyway, it's, as I said, like one of these weird and fascinating things that we don't, I guess we do. There are certain things we bring to weddings and funerals, and there's still certain symbolism goes on in that kind of thing, but not to the degree that it used to.
Rich and beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a question from Dale. What paper are you using for the color images that you color? And also,
Meaning,
as long as we're talking about process, there's another question about do you create your own filters?
I haven't been. I know you can, but there's so many out there. There's so many filters out there in packages that you can get reasonably inexpensively. You know, you can get a package of 100 filters to download for, I can't remember, like $30 or something. And often they're particular ones. They'll be like painterly filters, or there'll be again aged paper filters. So there's so much out there that I've never really needed to make them, but I know you can do that, and I know people who have. So the question about paper, so of course I used to buy photographic paper, darkroom photographic paper, silver gelatin paper for, and if I wanted to color it, I printed on any surface that had a tooth, any matte surface. And then they got discontinued. I think you can still get them now. Some places are still making them. But I don't work in the darkroom now, so I don't actually know. But they were all just matte papers. And then halfway through, I would often spray them again with a matte fixative to give them more tooth. So it was this process. But now there are so many paper surfaces out there that all the watercolor surfaces, you know, there's hot press and cold press, and so you can, so many different textures you can have. And lots of them are very nice for that pastel. They're very nice for colored pencils. And as I said, there's the Kozo paper. I mean, there's endless amounts of surfaces. And usually I actually try them out, and then I find something I like, and then I buy it. And they're not expensive ones. They're you know, Epsom does one that's a hot press and a cold press that are very nice. They're thick. They're 300 and something gram papers, and they're really, really nice to work on. So is that the answer to that question? What kind of paper? And as I said, you can get that very expensive, very thick, almost printmaking paper for printing on digitally that have got all those names of the great painters. I think Honeywell papers have really, really, really thick watercolor paper, but they're extremely expensive. And so I just go for something that I like the surface of, and yeah.
Okay. There's
so many papers.
A question about whether you have considered doing virtual workshops, particularly on the embroidery aspect of with your projects?
Not on the embroidery. I'm actually going to do a digital workshop that's basically going step by step how I do this particular process with the flowers, like what I do in Lightroom, because what I do is I put the image in Lightroom, I manipulate it, you then put it in Photoshop, you put the filters on, you play with the filters, you kind of have to know about a little. It's actually, I'm not a very technical person, so I kind of know what I need to know and not much more. And I've never really had lessons. There are so many YouTubes and tutorials online that I just go watch those sorts of things and then get so that I know what I'm doing. So I'm going to do a workshop where it's like step by step for doing the filters, and then step by step for what I do afterwards with the pastel and the pencil. So I used to teach workshops, and hopefully I will in the future, that are every aspect of hand coloring, like how I do it with oils, how I do it with pastels. So that's usually a week-long thing, a 5-day thing, that is all day, every day, and right through everything. But I'm going to do some digital ones that are just this process, that are not oil painting. They're what you have up in the gallery at the moment. But from sort of making the photograph, what I do to it on the computer, and then what I do to it afterwards with the materials. So
you've done a lot of those workshops in some amazing places to make it into a big vacation type of.
Yes, in Italy particularly. And in fact, Sirius is here. Hi, I can't see you because I don't have it on. Actually, I just do this. I do the gallery and I can see him. Can I see him? Where is he? He did one of my workshops in Italy.
Okay.
I don't know where he is actually. Never mind.
Well, so here's another question.
Oh, there he is. He's not got his camera on. Put your camera on. Anyway, yes.
A question from Matt about has your artistic process changed at all in 2020 with the changes in all our lifestyles from COVID? Have you felt as if you've sped up or slowed down, or felt a burst of creativity?
Interestingly enough, my sort of daily life has not changed because I work at home in my studio by myself all day, every day anyway. So that hasn't changed. It's just kind of, how many outings to movies and, well, none, but how many get-togethers with friends and so forth. So that's kind of weird and lonely, and that's very isolating. I find it because I live out here in the desert on 4 acres. It feels very isolated when I know I'm not doing my usual go out and have coffee and dinner with people. And so I've actually got a lot done. I have 3 shows up currently. I've got a show in Houston of the Nests right now, and I made all those earlier this year, and then suddenly this hit, and it was like, well, are we going to have the show or not? And she said, yes, go ahead and send it, and we'll do by appointment only, like all the galleries are doing now. And all the galleries have suggested we all do this what I'm doing now, and blogs and all sorts of things to just keep people interested in what's happening. And that's been a big learning curve actually, because I'm learning this technology and learning, having to put together more comprehensive sorts of presentations, and having to write, again, it's like quite time consuming. So, but it's good. And I've done a podcast, and I've done another talk. In fact, my friend got together many photographers and made a series that people subscribed to, and saw an artist talk an hour every week. And we raised something like $30,000, and each of us could nominate our charity, of course, our COVID charity. And that was kind of amazing. And it's, it makes you doing a very comprehensive talk, makes you actually have to seriously put together, a fairly intelligent, thing, she says, a fairly intelligent thing about your work. And that's always a challenge. So it can be good. But yeah, I don't know whether I answered that very well. It's just, so yes, life has changed, but I've probably been more productive because I've spent more time just working.
Okay.
And it's also very therapeutic. I have to say, the process of, as you all know, yes, you're nodding, Laura, of working with your hands, and especially with paint and color, it's very healing and it's very therapeutic. And I think, you know, I'm seriously addicted to the news, and so I could watch MSNBC all day and all night, except I know it's killing me slowly. So I try not to do that, and I try and, you know, I mean, I work in front of the TV, so when I say I watch it day and night, I'm actually working while I'm doing it, but it's actually more healthy. I turn it off and just like focus in on exactly what I'm doing. But I find it very, very therapeutic indeed. And, you know, I realize that lots of people don't have that sort of creative outlet in their life. Whatever it is, cooking or gardening or whatever, it's all good for you in these horrible times when we're dealing with, you know, a big list of things that are kind of horrifying and terrifying and ugly.
Do you have a newsletter or some way for people to keep up with your workshops?
What I'm going to do, I'll always post them on my Facebook page, which is a public page. Just Google my Facebook page. I'll put those up. I'm going to do one with Amanda Smith Gallery in Texas, and I'm probably going to do one again with this guy George Nabechi, who put together the series of talks. But I will certainly advertise when they're going to happen, and they're not going to be. I mean, they'll be 3 or 4 hours worth. They're not going to be a great big commitment of time and money like the other ones, because there's no materials to buy and no plane ride to do. But so I'm going to do those in several different with several different people. I've done workshops before, and then hopefully by the middle of next year, with any luck, we'll be back on the road.
So that's that your Facebook page is Kate Breakey Artist.
Yes, no, it's just Kate Breakey. And in fact, I'm terrible at all of this. I'm like the worst social media human being on earth. I'm going to, well, I've just been redoing my website, and I'll actually post it on my website, which is katebreakey.com. So I'll do upcoming events. At the moment, it says upcoming events for 2016. That's how much I do on the website. But I've been very good. I've been slowly actually getting my website with more work on it, and trying to be a better artist.
Does anybody else have any questions for Kate?
I just wanted to say hi to Kate.
Ah, there you are. There he
How are
is.
you?
There's the man. Where are you?
I'm still in El Paso.
El Paso, dealing with
Yeah.
terrible things.
Yes. But it was really fun to see you live.
Yes,
And
love to see you.
I'm glad that you're doing well.
Yep.
And your new work is just as amazing as ever.
Are you working away?
I am.
Good, good. Are you hand coloring at all?
No, but
Lightning.
I am going to now. You
Good.
have inspired me.
Good. Well, maybe you should come and do one of these workshops.
I would be more than happy to.
Okay. Well, I'll let you know. I've got your email address.
I recommended you to a friend for a workshop in Italy. I don't know if they. I said I have recommended you for a workshop in Italy with a group of artists. So I don't know if they've contacted you or not, but anyway, I have.
Well, I guess none of us are going to Italy anytime soon. I don't think we're allowed. I'm not allowed. This will be the first time in 20 years that I haven't gone back to Australia, which I usually do because I've got a 90-year-old mother there and my family. And often I go back for an entire month at Christmas to catch up. And
That's not gonna happen.
no, I would have to be quarantined for 2 weeks in a hotel that I'd have to pay for. So that ain't going to happen.
Correct.
Anyway, nice to see you. Very nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for checking in.
If we don't have any more questions, I want to take this opportunity to thank Kate for doing this talk. It was lovely.
Thank you. Thank you very
And
much.
to let everybody know that the Brickworks Gallery, we're open by appointment, so you can always email me through the gallery website. My email is working again. It was down for about 2 days, but it's finally working again, so you can email me through the gallery website. And we're going to have this work at the Atlanta Celebrates Photography Festival is basically through the end of October, but we're going to continue to show Kate's work beyond that. We'll always have a place for Kate here. We love her here at the gallery.
You've got nests, and you've got quail eggs, and you've got some of the bird strike stuff, and
I've got something
quite a lot
from
of
every series of yours. It's
Yes.
just extraordinary. I have a whole room of Kate's work here, and it's just gorgeous. And so if you do have an opportunity to come by the gallery, you're welcome to do so. I also have an online exhibition of the flowers work through ACP. That is, if you go to the gallery website, you'll see a link for that, and that's a really beautiful presentation. Or you can come in with mask and social distancing and with an appointment, and I'd be more than happy to show you this beautiful new work. So
Thank you so much for doing this.
well, thank you, Kate, and thank you everybody for coming tonight.
Yes, thank you very much.
So I guess we'll all say goodbye.
Yes, all right, we will. It's only 5 o'clock here, but I think I can have a drink now.
Yeah, me too. We're not the best at technology, but we did it, didn't we? All right, well, thank you, everybody.
Bye, Andrew.
Bye-bye. Bye, Kate. Bye, Laura.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.